In case you missed it, there was a spicy hearing on the Biden Autopen scandal yesterday. Mike Howell will be on to break it all down.
Every Democrat walked out before the hearing even started. So I guess they wanted to act much like the Biden presidency, Not there, not present.
They did not want to pay attention to that whatsoever, much like all the liberals who were over there on Blue Sky, the Twitter ripoff. Well, they demonstrated their commitment to free speech by banning Vice President J.D. Vance.
Yeah, he must have missed the guideline that says disagreement is hate speech, and they just want to lose money.
And should Juneteenth be a federal holiday? We'll have your thoughts at the end of the show.
I don't know. I feel like every day has kind of been a holiday ever since November or last year.
Well, Blaze News, the mandate, starts right now. Good evening, Patriots. I'm Jill Savage, joined by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
I've been reliably informed that everywhere in America today this summer is a Aperol Spritz afternoon. So, there you go.
Choose to partake if you want to. It's a great time. If you're MAGA, though, you're probably tired of winning, right? Whether it's the 2020 election or all the wokeness in the government, right? We know that Trump supporters, we continue to be vindicated by the new administration's transparency, but it goes so much deeper. So here to take us down the rabbit hole is Mike Howell. He's the president of Oversight Project. So Mike, thanks for being with us once again. Love having you on the show. So let's get into this because we know that Kash Patel revealed that the FBI had confiscated some fake IDs from Chinese nationals who were trying to obtain mail-in ballots. Sounds pretty fishy to me. So what is Oversight Project doing to ensure that there's going to be real accountability for this cover-up?
Yeah, so this is a massive story, but it's not altogether new. There were some reports by CBP back in 2020 that they discovered this stuff. And so what Kash ultimately disclosed to Congress was that the FBI was aware too and tracking it. Now, what really raised our hackles was two things. One, okay, it looks like a pretty big crime, so that's what the FBI should be investigating. So why'd they just refer it over to Congress, the legislative branch? So we're trying to square that one. We want to actually see accountability, and the guys with the guns and badges should do something about it instead of just telling, good old Chuck Grassley, with all due respect to him. But the second issue that we're zeroing in on, and the guys are in the lab right now trying to beat up the facts and legal arguments here, but at the highest level, the FBI and others during the Christopher Wray years told the Congress that there was no evidence of mail-in ballot fraud. And there's also intelligence community products that basically said the same thing. And so what I see happening is a lie from the government, and that's criminal when it is to Congress. And so we're pouring through statements from Wray and others and the various products that went to Capitol Hill that did not disclose this and instead said the exact opposite, that there was nothing to worry about. This was a huge thing of public concern. And it seems to me that the FBI, to no one's surprise, wouldn't do anything that could even tend to confirm the legitimate suspicions of President Trump and the rest of the country that knew it was a bogus election the whole time through.
Yeah, Mike, this really is a bombshell story, and it's very sad that not more people aren't talking about it. It's great that Kash Patel pointed this out. I just want to go through some quotes here from, to reveal the cover-up. The intelligence community's then analytic ombudsman, Barry Zuloff, said that China analysts appear hesitant to assess Chinese actions as undue influence or interference. These analysts appeared reluctant to have their analysis on China brought forward because they tended to disagree with the Trump administration's policies. Now, as you also know, in 2021, then DNI and corrupt CI Director John Ratcliffe directed the attention of senators on the select committee, right, on intelligence to look at this and see that these people were pressured, the analysts were pressured to withdraw their support from alternative viewpoints on China in an attempt to suppress it. So it's also already out there that there was a cover-up. Ratcliffe, now in charge of the CIA, acknowledges much back then. It was pointed out back then by the analyst ombudsman that this is being suppressed. Can you? I mean, I don't even know where to start with this. But first, Okay, what exactly was suppressed? Lay into it with the details of what was found. What was China trying to do?
Yeah, in this specific instance, and there's obviously a much larger pattern here, but in this specific instance, it was related to the production of, I think, 20,000 fake IDs that were scannable. You know, when you go to the grocery store and you may get a six pack, and if you have a young face like me, they still want to see your ID and they scan your ID. The same kind of mechanism for voting. And so we're trying to figure out uh, if they were used for voting. But certainly with that kind of functionality, they were created to be used for voting. They're capable of being scanned IDs at the voting places. And so that's a massive major concern. But the larger kind of problem here, as you know, that piece you referenced notes, is a pattern and practice of the intelligence community over time, a sustained period of time, to ignore anything that countered the CCP, general narrative. Keep in mind, go back to 2020, COVID era. They were covering up the origins of COVID, the United States government and intelligence community. They were doing anything they could to debunk that. Also, they had the Bidens on the payroll. The first family, or to be, was on the payroll of the CCP, just like they were for Ukrainian oligarchs through Burisma. And so just ask yourself, had it been Russia that got caught doing this, would you have known about it and would the government have taken extreme action? Of course they would have. We saw that, play out every time they found a Facebook group or a meme. They pulled the fire alarm and said Russia interference and collusions, but the intelligence community never does that with China. They frankly don't take it too seriously. It's the biggest foreign interference in this country is from China, and then now it's ranked Mexico number 2. But this is kind of why China's been eating our lunch. They hit us from all different directions, and they know they basically have a sleeping U.S. intelligence apparatus that doesn't want to deal with them.
So let's look at this story, right? Because if all these IDs, all these fake IDs were used to vote, well, then you clearly have election interference. We have failures on the part of the intel community. That's concerning in and of itself. But I look at this, and it's something that you said from the very top is, yeah, they knew about it at the time. They didn't tell us about it, though, until very recently. So I want to ask you, what is the most concerning part of this story with that in mind, right? Like that we knew behind the scenes that this was going on, but nobody wanted to tell us until a guy named Kash Patel took over at the FBI.
Yeah, that's right. And now it's up to him to investigate and hold these people accountable and refer them over to DOJ for prosecution. But what it tells us is that the intelligence community was a wholly owned enterprise that favored the left. I mean, this is also the time where, the Stop Asian Hate movement was happening, which to me looked like an intelligence operation, downstream of China to make people just not even bring up, their obvious suspicions that COVID came from China. And it just shows you like they're not willing, at least at that period of time, up until today. Hopefully, it's changed whole cloth. I'm not sure we're all the way there yet, but to do anything that poked the bear of China, because they knew at the end of the day that narrative hurt the elites in this country, and it hurt the chances of President Biden being reelected. Obviously, President Trump really ushered to the national stage the kind of rebranding and reframing the U.S. relationship towards China. That's kind of one of his major foreign policy things. Obama, claimed to have that pivot to Asia where they never actually pivoted. Trump was serious about it. And so making the threat that Trump was concerned about more serious would have hurt Biden and helped Trump. And that's the lens through which the intelligence community and others viewed basically the disclosure of any of this information. And it's the same kind of story with the Hunter Biden laptop. The FBI knew it was real and didn't say anything about it because they wanted Biden to win the election. Put this kind of pattern of election fraud in the same bucket as that. It's not, the weaponized government doesn't only act through, overt actions. Sometimes it's what they do by omission. I mean, that's the story of them letting the Biden family get away with, rampant international pay to play for decades, even though the evidence was in front of them. Sometimes their omissions are just as dangerous as their actions.
Mike, let's reiterate for the audience what needs to happen next, because, you said in our article 2 days ago, you said this is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, something that we need to remember. I know Kash Patel wants people to remember. They should be investigating and getting this ready for prosecution. So what exactly do you want to see happen next?
Yeah, well, this will be the basis of kind of what the Oversight Project does to throw the ball back in their court a little bit. Particularly as it relates to the lying that happened to Congress, which we're zeroing in on, which could implicate Christopher Wray and others. And so we basically want to make the point loudly that it's not sufficient just to disclose things in the name of transparency. That's great. We love transparency. That's why we have an oversight project. But we need the guys with the guns and badges who we, vest with the authority to investigate these things and give them awesome super tools and to go out and do it in guns and badges to actually wrap these people up. And I think that's why a lot of people out there were really concerned when the director and deputy started making cites to the statute of limitations being a reason they couldn't go after some things, or various other uh we'll call them excuses to not prosecute or investigate things. And we basically want to keep these things alive because at the end of the day, this only matters if we get accountability. Knowing about it's all cool and well and fun, but we need to see people actually held accountable for those things. And that's kind of what we want to see the FBI do. Chuck Grassley over in the Senate doesn't have a badge, doesn't have a gun. He's not going to be able to put these people in jail and solve for these crimes. He can talk about it. He could potentially write a legislative bill about it. But we need the FBI to do the people's business of investigating, and then DOJ to do the prosecuting.
Over at the Oversight Project, you have a great team of people, and you guys are working on so many different things and uncovering so much. So yesterday we had Joe Hanneman on the show. He had some articles out there about the alleged Minnesota assassin. So how did the Oversight Project track down the suspect's phone location over all throughout the world, right? It was in Dubai and India and just all over the world. How did you guys figure this part out?
Yeah, our sources and methods, if you will. Well, I'll tell you, commercially available cell phone data is there on the market. You can go out and purchase it. It's how businesses basically do digital marketing. We have long made use of cell phone data. The process is rather simple, actually. If you know the location of the person's house, you do what's called a geofence. You draw a digital circle around it and then pick up electronic devices that were pinging in that area, and then you follow them and see where they went. Now, recall we did this for illegal aliens a few years ago, where we tracked where they went when they crossed the border. We did it for the first Trump assassination attempt with Crooks and that very bizarre ping from his house that also pinged near an FBI field office in Washington D.C. So we did the same thing for this Minnesota shooter, and what we saw in the data that we put out was some weird international connections. This is a well-traveled man. That was already kind of in the record. And we put it out, and this is a really interesting way to go about it. We're kind of trying to democratize the investigative process and to crowdsource it. We have a great team, but at the end of the day, where resources and time and bandwidth are limited, and there's no reason why this shouldn't be out there for our other friends and internet sleuths to kind of look at and run against other leads that they may have. And so we dump the data out there, and while we're still conducting the analysis with everyone else who's kind of piled on to see if they can pick up any interesting patterns.
Mike, you also released your organization released recently some information on Joe Biden's aggressive pronoun policy. So it'd be great if you could share with our audience how their tax dollars, all of our tax dollars, are being used for gender inclusive communication.
Oh boy! So the Biden years were very impressive, if you want to use the word, for the bureaucratic muscle they put into inventing a sophisticated architecture, agency by agency, everywhere, for basically implementing transgenderism into the federal government. And so every department and agency, we've come across over the last couple of years basically has a process for exactly how to deal with these things, including speech codes, resources for people who want to transgender, ways to basically punish people who, may raise an eyebrow at the whole concept. And so most recently, we put out something from the Department of Agriculture, which basically had their pronoun guide, which is the rules you had to obey by if you didn't want to get punished. How to use pronouns, how to introduce yourself on a Zoom, like how you can refer to people, and all these just ludicrous terms that looks like they kind of just were, downloaded from the Human Rights Campaign and put into the federal government bureaucracy. But this kind of growing architecture really conquered the entire Biden administration. And when we kind of look at how the right governs versus how the left governs, you don't see that level of sophistication on the right because we don't control the bureaucracy. They're 95% left leaning. We get in there and we try to just get rid of things. When they're in there, they build things and they make it penetrate every last layer of government. And that's what they did for transgenderism. Ultimately, they want to recruit more transgenders is what these policies look like to me, and trying to encourage employees to get on gender bending hormones or what have you, and then punish anybody who might speak out, because that's an ideological signifier. They don't want any conservatives or, common sense Americans in the government. And so if you express, qualms with transgenderism, they want you out, and they use that as an excuse to do it.
Mike, when people ask, who are you having on the show tonight? Who's going to be there? And we say, oh, it's Mike Howell. And they go, oh, that's the Autopen guy, right? So you are known as the Autopen guy. We'll have to get the latest from you coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Mike right after this. Well, it's sad because we know that family farms are shutting down, and it's not because all the grocery store meat, it's all that hit and miss. It's coming from overseas right now. 85% of the so-called grass-fed beef on U.S. shelves is actually imported, and most people have no idea. That's why you need to look at goodranchers.com, because it's not just about buying great meat. It's actually about supporting American ranchers and getting top-tier quality and actually knowing where your food comes from. Good Rancher sells meat that is only 100% born, raised, and harvested right here in the United States from local family farms, and you'll be able to taste the difference. The 4th of July is right around the corner, so celebrate America's birthday with 100% American meat, and if you subscribe today, you can get your free pick of meat for life. You can choose from Wagyu burgers, hot dogs, bacon, or wings in every box. Plus, use my code Jill at checkout and you'll get an extra $40 off. So visit goodranchers.com to shop American meat that you can trust. Remember, use my code Jill for free meat for life and an extra $40 off. It's Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. Yesterday, the Oversight Project had their day in the sun in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee about Joe Biden, or maybe more accurately, Biden's staffers' use of the Autopen. Here's testimony from Theo Wold, a member of the Oversight Project.
The Oversight Project, of which I am a board member, has discovered that the Biden White House deployed an Autopen to affix President Biden's signature to pardons, prison commutations, executive orders, and presidential proclamations. The Oversight Project's research has found that the Biden White House first deployed the Autopen to affix President Biden's signature to a proclamation on day 5 of his administration, and that there were at least 3 different Autopen signatures in use throughout President Biden's tenure in the White House. In June 2022, the Biden White House began deploying the Autopen to sign clemency warrants and executive orders. Autopen use skyrocketed from there. We found that of the 51 clemency warrants issued during the Biden presidency, over half, 32 in total, were signed with an Autopen. And these include some of the most controversial acts of clemency of the Biden presidency, including death row commutations and the preemptive pardons of members of the Biden family, Dr. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, and more that were issued in the final days of the Biden presidency.
So, Mike Howell, take us through all that stuff that we learned yesterday. I see a very suited up Mike Howell right behind Theo as he was giving his testimony. So what did we learn?
It was great. I mean, Theo absolutely stole the show. So he was there to go over the findings of the Oversight Project, but also to take it to its real basic constitutional implications, that the Biden years were a huge constitutional disaster and a flagrant abuse, in that we didn't have a president. We had a president by committee by Autopen. And he was really walking the senators through the implications, particularly of the 25th Amendment. 1967, after JFK was assassinated, the 4th president in 100 years, with a couple incapacitated presidents in between, the country came up with an exact process to deal with an incapacitated president. And that's Section 4 of that amendment, too, where the VP and the cabinet could get together and vote and basically tell the Congress, hey, our president's incapacitated. And he basically walked the senators through how they avoided that like the absolute plague for political reasons, and that it was their preference to have an incapacitated president. And so I think he really got the attention of the Senate committee. I really appreciated Senator Hawley, who I think had the most meaningful part of the hearing, when he, kind of said, well, what can we do as the Senate? And Theo walked him through the exact documents to go after, and then he committed to doing just that. And so we like to see positive actions and actually steps being taken from these hearings. As great as it is to have our findings discussed in that body and, on TV, we want to get to the bottom of this. And I think Hawley indicated some momentum behind the Senate doing just that.
Yeah, let's watch that clip now. Let's play that clip for our audience of Josh Hawley.
in the policy paper flow to the Oval Office, there should be a record of what documents are presented to the president when and when he gave his assent to the actions that are listed in those documents, whether it's a judicial nomination or it's a statutory response to Congress.
Well, I think the answer is we need to get those documents. And I just say to our friends in the media over here, you guys need to be asking for those documents, and we need to be asking for them, Mr. Chairman.
First off, I can't get enough of these videos. I mean, I like Theo. What he's talking about is really important. And then I like this Godfather vibe in the background I see going on. But he's not wrong. I mean, this is one of the greatest scandals in American history, potentially. So how do we go about getting those documents again?
Yeah, well, it's actually the easiest investigation of all time. And I've been yelling this for a while. I know we talked about interviewing Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson because they say they know. And so just go out and ask them and make them tell you. But another very easy layup, and this is Investigations 101, is there is a control document at the White House as to who is authorized to use the Autopen and for what, and then logs of when it is used. And so Theo, with his experience of working in the Trump White House and his deep knowledge of how paper moves throughout the White House, was kind of mapping that out to the Senate. And so that's what Hawley says he's going to do. And I hope that the Trump administration, who, by the way, doesn't even need the Senate to ask to put this stuff out there, will turn it over and make it public. And then we can kind of take another investigative step to say, all right, here's who had access. Now let's figure out if Biden actually told them to sign these things or was aware that they were being signed or had the capacity to sign them. And so, inch by inch, we'll get there. But the Senate doing anything is a big step.
Yeah, I want to take a look at Theo and Senator Ted Cruz because they did talk about exactly that. Who can sign them? How can they do it? Because we know that President Joe Biden, he was not the one really running things behind the show. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Mr. Wald, let me ask you as a legal matter, if there's a law that's passed both houses of Congress and it goes to the White House and a staffer auto-pens signing that law without the president's authorization, is that law legally passed and signed into law?
No.
If an executive order is issued and a staffer auto-pens it without the president's authorization, is that executive order legally binding?
No.
And if a pardon is issued from the President of the United States and a staffer auto-pens it without the president's authorization, is that pardon legally binding?
No.
I think in that 30 seconds, Mike, you see the entire conversation that we have had about the Autopen thus far with you on the show. Hey, X happens, Y happens, Z happens. Is any of this legal? If this is the way that it happens, no. The answer is always no. So the ramifications of this, Mike, are massive.
Absolutely. And Senator Cruz really narrowed in on the key issue here. Like Democrats will say, and they weren't at the hearing, by the way, they ran away and didn't want to be there. But Democrats argue through their surrogates and media, well, Trump auto-pen things too, or someone, Thomas Jefferson had an early stage auto-pen. It's nothing to see here. But the issue is, one, the capacity, and two, the awareness. Biden didn't have either. And so what Senator Cruz is really keying in on is the most important issue. It is about whether Biden actually directed it or was able to direct it. And if he's not, there's no question those things are legally insufficient. And so that's where this investigation has always been pointed, despite the trying to confuse things by the left and the smoke and mirrors they throw up. That's why they ran out of the hearing room after throwing a little hissy fit through Senator Durbin. Another reason is because guess who has a funky, no good, bad pardon? Senator Schiff, who's on that committee. And so he didn't want to be there because he could go to jail if he's prosecuted for the crimes he was pardoned for.
Oh, you could say that 3 times. Schiff could go to jail. I think there's a lot of people who'd be happy about that. I am happy about Cruz in that moment, by the way, when he gets in that voice, right? It's a Protestant preacher voice a little bit. And he's laying down some constitutional hammers. That's good times, good stuff. But speaking of, the president not being there, Ashley Moody had some thoughts about this. We should roll those. She really understood this problem that's been going on for a long time, where Democrats, she said, have been making a sport of hiding the health of the president.
Look, I mean, if you go back to our history, Senator, so Grover Cleveland, Wilson, FDR, JFK, President Johnson, President Biden, it's almost a Democrat sport to keep from the American people the health and acuity of the chief executive. They've been doing this for a long time, but this is of another level, especially as Mr. Spicer was mentioning, the complicity of the national media in obscuring this, but also that cabinet officers would go to the lengths of avoiding interacting with the chief executive because they were fearful that they would have to speak to his diminished capacity.
That's absolutely right. She nailed it. And Theo gave numerous examples of instances where that's happened. And I think there's a very important ideological difference behind all of that. Obviously, those are all political lies for sure, but it's because Democrats and the left believe in the power of the administrative state, not in the power of the president. So for them, it is completely acceptable to have a figurehead chief executive because in their mind, the power flows through the agencies, the regulators. Every other American with, 2 brain cells that can read the Constitution understands, no, that's not how it works. We vest all the executive power in one individual. So they need to be in charge of things. And this is basically the undercurrent of all of the legal battles we're having today and why President Trump's in court is because the left and the radical judges want to deny him the power of the presidency. To put it simply, the legal theory for the left was during the Biden years, you don't need a president to do things. And now during the Trump years, it is the president cannot do things. It is just flipping the Constitution on its head. And I think we all see it for what it's worth.
Yeah, and this is a really important point because throughout history, there have been times where a president is sick, a president is not well, and there are people who want to hide behind that and run with it. Going back, a long ways, you could poke at the progressives because Woodrow Wilson's wife was famous for doing this even before Roosevelt. So this has always been a perennial problem in American history. What really concerns me, Mike, is that we're at a point at which people were acting as if we don't need a CEO, right? The whole thing just runs. It's as if it was ripping down the veil of sort of the blob or the Borg, or just moving forward. No one needs to be told what to do because there's just this progressive line and everyone does it, as if there really is no boss. And it seems to me that the Trump presidency is in broad strokes is a reassertion of actual executive power within the context of American government.
That's absolutely right. And dare we say of democracy itself. The president's the only person in this country, besides the vice president, that every American votes across state lines. The whole country votes for the president. It's obviously not the case for senators and House members. And so it's the biggest expression of democratic intent in the country. And so to basically say we don't even need that individual to be the president is just turning democracy again with the Constitution completely on its head, which I think speaks to the psychological projection of the left, who for the last few years has been decrying the America First movement as an attack on democracy itself. I think that all comes from a deep place within the soul of the left where they actually aren't even for democracy. They just appreciate it as a slogan.
Well, Mike, the last question. We hear all this. We want to be a part of this. We want to help. Where do we go from here? What's the next step?
Oh, so many steps. As I said, Gallups, and we have Gallups, not steps to take in the piece that came out on The Blaze. But there are things the Oversight Project is doing from the outside. We'll have some more updates on the ways the signature was utilized over the years. But it's really up to the people with the guns and badges now to compel testimony, to obtain, bank records, text messages. Think of what the January 6th committee did or any of the January 6th FBI investigations. I want to see those resources and tactics deployed at this problem. I want to see Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson under oath because, again, they say they know who was propping up the White House and who was running it, and they can't hide those sources from a grand jury. So I think a grand jury needs to be impaneled. And we can't just rely on Congress to hold hearings and talk about it. We need legal process.
This is when things start to get good. This is music to my ears, Mike Howell. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about some blue sky. If you don't know what that is, we'll explain it to you, but JD Vance is involved. We'll talk about it right after this. Well, sometimes you just have to try new things. J.D. Vance dove headfirst into the liberal playground known as Blue Sky, and just 12 minutes later, poof, he was gone. He was reinstated, though, but this roller coaster launch has conservatives crying censorship. And Blue Sky, they're trying to blame a glitch. So, MP, what would you rather do than join Blue Sky? I figure this is a pretty long list.
I mean, there's a lot of things I'd start with. I'd rather jump naked into a pool of thumbtacks, I think.
It's a good start there.
Good start.
If people don't know, Blue Sky is essentially the liberal Twitter X, right? They could not handle that Elon Musk bought X, changed it over to X, and then said, oh, by the way, you can say whatever you want over here. It's going to be totally free, totally cool. We're not going to censor anything. Liberals could not take it, so they had to go start their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's been in this kind of petri dish ever since of every sort of lunatic woke person getting on there in solidarity against Elon and X actually having something akin to free speech. And what has happened over time is, they're all sitting there, there's different groups of them. One prominent group, I imagine, is this sort of woke housewives of America drinking, Chardonnay and throwing their wine bottles at anyone who says anything that is naughty speech. There's a lot of Karens on there. And then there's your basic, radicals. But all of them agree on one thing. They're on there because they do not want to hear, apparently, what the other side has to say.
No, so let's go ahead and bring the vice president back into this conversation because J.D. Vance was out there. He was just giving his thoughts on the Supreme Court and the trans procedures for kids, right? They came out and said, this is what's going to happen. J.D., he just says, hey, here it is. He's going to share Chief Justice Roberts, where he was deferring to the experts on transgender treatment for kids. He was noting that there were no medical consensus and states should be able to decide. Crazy. It's called the 10th Amendment. And he was going through and echoing Justice Thomas's views that they were flawed science and big pharma influence that were driving all of these experimental therapies. Now, when I lay that out that way, you can see how this might enrage all of the leftists.
I mean, look, he had the audacity to ask, what do you think about his informed opinion on a topic? And what happened next was not surprising, but very instructive.
Yes. So 12 minutes later, this lasts an entire 12 minutes, and then it was taken down. Of course it was taken down, but Blue Sky, they came out with a statement through Forbes, and they were saying, oh, no, he was briefly flagged by our automated systems that thought that somebody was impersonating him. No, this couldn't be the actual vice president. And once we figured out that it was, then everything was going to be fine, Matthew. It's going to be fine. We'll let him back on because they realized, oops, we actually did just take the sitting vice president of the United States of America off of our platform. And maybe, just maybe, that's not a great look.
No, what's hilarious is they have to do this all the time because they all get angry at anything that's, hate speech, and then they go nuts and this person should be banned. And in this case, you can see, you see the guy telling them all almost like trying to placate the crowd saying, we're a business. We're not going to make money unless we do have some speech on here. And they're all, shouting, no, get rid of Vance. He shouldn't be here. And I'm sure, the reasoning is the same as it is everywhere else. This has all started from very bad, destructive philosophies from decades ago. But how it's all evolved is that now you have this generation of people who think that anything they don't agree with, right, is not only hate speech, but it's harmful to them, right? It always ends up that people will die if you allow people to say things that I don't like. And that's the temper tantrum that we just saw occur on Blue Sky. And it's instructive because this is real. This isn't just like some conservative trope, right, about how like the right has more opinions and is more able to deal with disagreement. It just is reality. There's a certain personality type and a certain evil philosophy behind it that will not accept, anything that violates their worldview.
And I think that, we come from the side where I don't care. Like you have the right to say whatever you want to say. Please, I would rather see you take the mask off and just be completely out in the open because I think it's more beneficial for everyone involved to just have real, transparent conversations. If you want to be a socialist, if you want to be a communist, just say it, right? Let's have these arguments. But to hide behind the shields that they have hidden behind for decades now, it's like, okay, no, we can go through and we can say these things. And you can say that you don't agree with the vice president. I'm sure there are a lot of people still in this country that don't agree with what he had to say. That's fine. Just say it in an open and honest manner.
Yeah, and the thing is, this isn't really a free speech issue. Like free speech in the Anglo-American tradition, it never meant everyone can say anything they want anytime. Like there were blasphemy laws, when those were in line with free speech. Actually, that everyone thought back in the day, because free speech really narrowly meant all like political speech, political argument. That's what it really referred to at its core. You can't take that away from centuries of Anglo-American tradition. So the whole point of it is, when it comes to disagreeing on political policy, right? Everyone should be able to argue these out. You have to argue these things out. You have to hash them out, unless you have, a dictator. Even in a monarchy, you would have people arguing. You'd have nobles arguing with the king. You'd have people in court. I mean, so the idea here that that there's any free speech, that's just ridiculous. What's going on here is you have people who refuse to handle, right, a political opinion that disagrees with them. And it's to the point of kind of psychopathy, right? I mean, we can't have them on the platform. I don't want to hear it. It somehow harms me if, anyone disagrees with me at all. And that's a real problem. I mean, that's more of a mental problem than anything else.
I think this, though, might be one of the better things that has actually ever happened to Blue Sky, because I think there are millions of people that are learning what this thing is for the first time ever, because it says that they have about 3.5 million daily active users, where X has 300 million daily active users. And it reminds me of one of the memes that I put out this morning. And it's like, I'm not addicted to X. I'm monitoring the situation. I have to know. I have to know all the things that are going on. There is a lot going on in the world, and I need to know it.
It's actually true, right? I mean, people still to this day try to tell me, I should be off Twitter more than I am probably, but people should tell me like, oh, well, that's not real life. It is real life. This is the best way to get news. If you're curating your threads, you get a strong sense of what different factions and groups think. But, 3 million to 300 million, I mean, that's what Blue Sky has. It really is like a very small petri dish of lunacy going on. But it is hilarious how J.D. Vance just said, "Hi, I'm J.D. Vance. I'd like to converse with you." And they all screamed and yelled and said, "No, we don't want to do that."
It's not just Matthew and I that are addicted to X, because we'll have your replies on the show coming up next. We're going to talk about Juneteenth. Should this be a federal holiday or not? We'll break it all down next. Well, in case you didn't know, today is a holiday. So we're going to celebrate Juneteenth like Joe Biden did at the White House last year. The Autopen scandal that we were talking about earlier on the show, yeah, it's real, you guys. Look at that. Joe Biden just 1 year ago today. I can't believe it, MP, that is what we had as the president of the United States.
I mean, just showing that, we need to see more footage like that just to remind ourselves. There was also a woman standing next to him. I forget her name, like Kamala, I think her name was. Yeah. Kamala something or other. Yeah. I'm glad those days are behind us.
It's a lot different. But all joking aside, we, of course, had to ask you about this on X today. So should Juneteenth be a federal holiday? Overwhelmingly, everybody, the people have spoken, and they have said, no, MP, this should not be a federal holiday. And there are even some conservatives that are out there that are like, oh, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. Our audience is telling us right now, they don't think it's a thing.
Yeah, I think they stand. There's a lot of people in their shoes, and we had a great article actually at The Blaze. You can find it about this, an op-ed saying this is why I don't celebrate Juneteenth. And it's not as if there's some good things about the original holiday, but it wasn't recognized by a wide variety of people. In fact, it was really something that libs didn't pay attention to, and a few conservative scholars would point out to show people that there were actually Black Americans who were happy at the end of the Civil War. And a few conservative scholars, because most of the liberal propaganda would just say, this is all oppressive against black people. So, there were a few conservatives who actually talked about it more than anyone else, but it wasn't on the national radar until sort of wokeism took it up and ruined it.
Let's get to some of the best replies from today. Captain Ron, and I love that name, says, because nobody even knows what it is. Just sounds like somebody made up something to replace an actual holiday. I've never even heard about it until a few years ago when they whipped it out on us, which is kind of what they tried to do on the national scene.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that they pulled it out of a hat and then foisted it on the country in a very volatile time when they were really telling everyone they were evil because of the color of their skin was unfortunate. Like that taints the entire holiday now.
Now, TKE, he's going to go through, or he or she is going to go through and explain exactly what it was, saying it is a Galveston, Texas holiday because the blacks that were still there after the Civil War didn't know the Civil War was over. It was kind of like the Japanese soldiers on the island after World War II. They didn't know the war was over. So Biden wants it to be the new 4th of July. And I think that is the point of contention for a lot of people, is they feel like, hey, hold on. We have something that we are celebrating. Don't switch it out. Don't do this whole bait and switch thing. Don't give me a black national anthem here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this interesting part of history where you did have a lot of people who realized what had happened and celebrated it. And that's why it was in, again, more right-leaning history books rather than left, which want to say everyone was oppressed all the time. But again, what happened was they took this up during the midst of real racial unrest that they foisted on the entire country and made it part of some woke pantheon. And that doesn't work. It was artificial the way in which they did this.
And Barbara rounds out the replies saying, we have an Independence Day that clearly celebrates a shared purpose, American independence from the British monarchy, and has gained meaning over generations into a living recognition of American sacrifice and grit. And I wanted to end on that one because every now and then we get a good positive comment.
Yes, and look, this is July 4th incorporates all the stuff. July 4th incorporates all Americans, all of American history, and the Declaration of Independence, and the soul of this country that we have here and we have yet to save. And so, I think there's a real truth to what she's saying there, in that why don't we make the holidays we had great again? Let's try that.
With this 4th of July, I want to go back and I want to go to what Mike Howell was saying earlier on the show today, because it feels like, yes, there are a lot of things that are coming up, and we are waiting. We are waiting for that first shoe to drop, that first indictment to come down, those first charges to be brought. The patience, Matthew, is wearing a little bit thin, right? This 4th of July may be a good gift that they could give us as a country to make sure that we're actually going to continue to be the country that we know and love, is to actually, charge them, indict them, bring something to the American people as a peace offering.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, I feel like I stand in for a lot of the audience on this and agree with a lot of you out there when I look at this and I say, I like the president, appreciate the president so much and what he's doing, and all the people who are there, so many good people I know in the administration. But when it comes to this issue, actually seeing justice be done and people actually be indicted and put in jail for wrongdoing, I think I'm a very suspicious man, as the line goes in The Godfather, because once people get in government, actually making that happen is hard. And a lot of times people don't prioritize this. And that's why we love Mike Howell. I have full confidence that Trump and the administration want to do this. They want to punish wrongdoing in the past. They want justice to be reestablished in this country, especially when it comes to the federal government and all the terrible things that occurred over the last years. But again, we have to see it. And that's why we like Howell, because he's pushing that. And unless we all push, this stuff may not get done. So trust but verify, right? We're cautiously optimistic, but we're getting to the point where we really need to start, seeing some action here.
Yeah, I do believe that the Trump administration wants to do this. But what I look at is a history throughout, my lifetime as an adult of the 2008 financial crisis. Well, what happened? What did Barack Obama do to all those Wall Streeters, all those bankers? Well, no, nothing. They got away with it. Even what Hal was saying earlier on the show, Chris Wray, he knew about all of the 20,000 Chinese fake IDs that were out there. They knew about it. Mm-hmm. What did they do about it, though? Absolutely nothing, right? So we have to break that cycle, and because I believe that they do want to have things change. I don't think that they want to have everything as the status quo. That is why he was elected. But help me help you, right? Like, you have to give us something, because if they don't, things are not going to, I mean, the midterms alone, right? Like, you have to make sure that you have something that people go out and vote for the midterms, but just to make sure that the poll numbers and everything, like that, everybody's still with you, right? That we have this moment in time is so important. And I think that's why we feel the way that we do right now, because this is a make or break moment for the country.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I mean, here's the problem. If you're in that position, you might think to yourself, look, I know it's important. I know I want to do it. I only have so many resources. I only have so much time. And by the way, guys, I'm trying to reform the federal government itself, right? I mean, I have a job to do. We need to get the job done in the agency. And then we need to be reforming the agency. We got to get rid of all the people in here who shouldn't be here. And then you also want me to, go after the bad guys in the past. I'm going to try to do it all. But how should I prioritize this? And I think for the administration as a whole, the reality is that, like you just said, Jill, you have to prioritize this somewhere. And there's a number of reasons for this. One is so it doesn't happen again, right? But two is it helps to break down the narrative in this country. If you go out and you punish some of these people for wrongdoing who deserve to be punished, and boy, there are many who do, what you will do is help change the poll numbers over time, because you will delegitimize the other side, which said that all this stuff was fine. This is why they tried to do it to you, to delegitimize you in front of all the people in the middle who can make a difference when it comes to voting time, who say, oh, well, they went after Trump and that was bad because he had to go to court. You need to do this to actual wrongdoers, because what will happen is you'll start winning even more people over. So there's a future reason to do this, right? There's a present reason to do this as well. It's not just like going back in the past and like cataloging the books. I mean, this is really important stuff.
We know Israel and Iran, they're getting a lot of the headlines right now. But to go back one more time to the Obama administration, Rahm Emanuel famously said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And you know that even though we have people at the top of all of these departments, they're still filled with lifelong bureaucrats that are still fighting against it. That's what we talk about every single day on this show. So you know that if they get a chance, they're going to make this and say, oh, you know what? No, we can't do this. We can't push back here because we have all these other things that we have to worry about right now. So you have to keep pressing forward.
Oh, yeah, because they're going to do anything they can. Washington, D.C. does not want this precedent to be established. That's why they didn't want Ed Martin in there, sitting in the prosecutor's office. They do not want this precedent to be established. They want it continue to go on and on and on, where you can just do whatever and it's just politics and you get away with it. But that's what we need to change. And I have confidence that we will, and we're going to keep pushing for it to happen.
Are you going to celebrate Juneteenth when you go home tonight?
I don't know how I'm allowed to celebrate it. So, I really don't know what the proper way is. I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right. I think it's probably wise of you. You know what? But everybody out there that is celebrating, go ahead. We're not going to stop you. Go enjoy your Juneteenth. But everybody, it's Friday tomorrow. Get back to work. There's one more day before the weekend, and we are all going to be back here and starting it all over again tomorrow. We'll see you then.